If you had told me, even 5 years ago, that I would be sitting here, in this quiet little sunroom, with the lavender walls I finally painted myself, telling you this story, I would have called you a liar. I would have smiled that tight, polite smile we women perfect for when the world suggests our happiness is built on anything less than solid ground. My name is Ruth, and for 25 years, my life was built on what I thought was granite. Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. It turned out to be sand. It all started, as these things often do, not with a bang, but with a series of small, almost imperceptible shifts, like the first tiny, hairline crack in a favorite ceramic mug. You notice it, you run your thumb over it, but you tell yourself it's nothing. It can still hold the tea. Until one day it can't. The man at the center of my story is David, my David. Or rather, the man I thought was mine. We married young, full of that blinding, beautiful certainty that only the young can possess. He was ambitious, with a smile that could light up a room and a mind that saw numbers and opportunities where I saw people and stories. I suppose that was the first clue, wasn't it? The storyteller and the accountant. I thought we balanced each other. We built a life. A beautiful, sprawling home in a neighborhood where the lawns were green and the cars were clean. We had one son, Leo, the absolute light of my life. He has my curious eyes and his father's stubborn chin. By all external measures, we had arrived. David's consulting firm was thriving. I had left my job in library sciences to be a full-time mother, a homemaker, the curator of our family's story. I was so proud of that life. I polished it, I nurtured it, I believed in it, with every fiber of my being. The first real crack, the one I couldn't just smooth over with my thumb, appeared on a Tuesday. It was always a Tuesday, wasn't it? The most mundane of days. Leo was 14, all lanky limbs and a newfound obsession with video games that made dinner conversations a series of grunts. David was working later and later, his explanations becoming vaguer, wrapped in the impenetrable jargon of merger acquisitions and client onboarding. That particular Tuesday, I was cleaning out his home office. He hated when I did this, said he had a system, but his system looked an awful lot like organized chaos to me. I was dusting the frame of a picture of us from our 20th anniversary, a trip to Tuscany. His smile in that photo, it reached his eyes. I remember thinking, as I wiped the glass, when was the last time I saw that smile? And then my elbow knocked over a pile of folders. Papers skittered across the Persian rug. Sighing, I got on my knees to gather them. It was then I saw it. A credit card statement, not from our joint account, but from an American Express card I'd never seen before. In his name, David M. Hayes. The billing address was a P.O. box in a neighboring town. My heart did a funny little stutter step, a P.O. box. Why would David need a P.O. box? My mind, the storyteller, immediately began weaving innocent explanations. A surprise for me? For Leo? Maybe it was for a sensitive business expense he didn't want mixed with our personal accounts. He was always paranoid about audits. I tried to shove the thought down, to fold it up and tuck it away with the statement back into the folder. But the paper felt like it was burning my fingers. I sat back on my heels, the dust cloth forgotten in my lap. The house was so quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the distant thump, thump, thump of Leo's bass from upstairs. And underneath it all, a new, terrifying sound, the low, insistent whisper of doubt. I decided to call my Auntie Grace. Grace is the soft place to fall in our family. If my mother was the backbone, Grace was the heart. Her voice, even on the phone, feels like a warm embrace. "Ruthie, sweetheart," she answered, her voice warm with a smile, too. "What do I owe the pleasure?" "Oh, nothing, Auntie. Just cleaning." Feeling a little out of sorts. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Grace has a built-in lie detector. Out of sorts, how? Is it Leo? Is he eating enough? That boy is a string bean. No, Leo's fine. It's probably nothing. I found a credit card statement in David's office. For a card I didn't know he had. The silence this time was heavier. What kind of statement? I don't know. I didn't really look. It had a P. O. Box for the address. "Ruth," she said, and her tone had shifted from warm to gently cautious. "Did you ask him about it?" "No. You know how he is about his office. He'd just get annoyed that I was snooping." I put a whiny voice on the last word, mimicking David's usual complaint. "Well, maybe it's nothing. A business thing. But keep your eyes open, honey. Sometimes the story we're living isn't the one being written." After I hung up with Grace, the doubt didn't leave. It had taken root. That night, David came home at 8. He looked tired, but he kissed my cheek, asked about my day. He smelled of his usual cologne, but underneath it, was it just the scent of his office? Or was there a faint trace of something else? Something floral? I told myself I was being ridiculous. A cliché, the paranoid wife. We ate a late dinner, just the two of us, Leo having already scavenged the kitchen. I watched David as he talked about a difficult client, his hands moving, his face animated. He was here, but he wasn't. His eyes kept flicking to his phone, face down on the table beside him. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "You seem distracted." He looked up, and for a split second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Irritation? Guilt? It was gone so fast I couldn't be sure. "Just a lot on my mind, Ruth. The business doesn't run itself, you know." "I know," I said softly. "I just miss you." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It was his hand, the one I'd held for 25 years, the one with the little scar on the knuckle from a childhood accident. But the squeeze felt perfunctory, like an item on a to-do list. Squeeze wife's hand. Reassure her. "I'm right here," he said, but his eyes were already drifting back towards the dark screen of his phone. And that was the true beginning. Not with the credit card statement, but with that moment at the dinner table. The moment I realized the man sitting across from me, in my home, eating the food I'd prepared, was a stranger. The foundation beneath my feet gave its first, terrifying lurch. The tea was starting to spill, and I was only just beginning to understand that the mug was not just cracked, but shattered. The weeks that followed that Tuesday were a masterclass in quiet torture. Every interaction with David was now filtered through this new, terrible lens of suspicion. I became a detective in my own life, piecing together clues I desperately wished I wasn't finding. His phone, which had once been just a phone, became a totem of all my fears. It was always with him, a sleek, black appendage. He took it into the bathroom with him. He slept with it, on his nightstand, face down. One evening, he left it on the kitchen counter while he went out to get the mail. It buzzed, and a notification lit up the screen. No message preview, just a name. Chloe. My blood ran cold. Chloe. It was a beautiful name, melodic. It sounded young. I stood there, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, staring at that name as if it were a snake. Who was Chloe? A client? A new assistant? The rational part of my brain, the part that was still Ruth from before, offered these explanations. But the new Ruth, the one with the cracked foundation, knew. She just knew. When David came back in, humming, he picked up the phone, glanced at it, and a small, private smile touched his lips. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. He typed a quick response and slipped the phone into his pocket. "Who's Chloe?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. I was pouring myself a glass of water, trying to look casual. The humming stopped. He looked at me, his expression carefully neutral. "Chloe? She's a junior analyst on the Pendleton account. Why? No reason. Just saw the name pop up on your phone." He shrugged, a little too forcefully. "She's been a godsend, honestly. Sharp. Works late without complaint. Not like the last one." He walked over and kissed my forehead. "You're not getting jealous of my staff now, are you, Ruth?" He said it like a joke, but his eyes were searching my face. I forced a laugh. It sounded brittle to my own ears. "Don't be silly, just making conversation." But the seed was planted, and it was a vile, fast-growing weed. "Works late without complaint." The words echoed in my head. Is that where he was? Working late with Chloe? I felt a shameful, burning need to know. I know some of you will judge me for this, for the snooping. But when you're drowning in uncertainty, you grab for any piece of driftwood you can find. A few days later, when David was in the shower, I did something I never thought I was capable of. I took his phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, Leo's birthday. Nothing. And then, a desperate, pathetic guess. I typed in CHLOE. The phone unlocked. The world tilted. The sound of the shower running seemed to grow distant, replaced by a roaring in my ears. I stood there, in the middle of our bedroom, holding this portal to my husband's secret life. I felt like a thief. I felt like a fool. I didn't have to search for long. The text thread with Chloe was right at the top. I didn't scroll far. I didn't need to. The most recent exchange was from last night. David, 9:47 p.m., stuck in another mind-numbing budget meeting. Wish I was with you. Chloe, 9:48 p.m. I know, baby. Me too. Can you call me after? I miss the sound of your voice. David, 9:49 p.m. I'll try. She's been asking a lot of questions lately. Need to be careful. She. That was me. I was she. The inconvenient wife. The question asker. I dropped the phone back on the nightstand as if it had burned me. I stumbled into the hallway, my hand over my mouth, feeling like I was going to be sick. The evidence was no longer a whisper, it was a scream. The shower shut off, and I fled downstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I needed air. I needed a voice of reason that wasn't screaming in panic inside my own head. I drove to Auntie Clara's house. Clara is Grace's older sister, and where Grace is a warm blanket, Clara is a cold, sharp splash of water to the face. She doesn't tolerate fools, and in that moment, I felt like the biggest fool of all. I found her in her garden, kneeling on a cushion, attacking weeds with a ferocity that was intimidating. She looked up as I approached, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "You look like hell, Ruth," she said, not unkindly. "What's he done?" I burst into tears. The whole story tumbled out: the credit card, the P.O. box, the dinner, the phone, the texts. I told her everything, my words slurred with sobs. When I finished, I stood there, wiping my nose on my sleeve, feeling utterly broken. Clara listened, her expression granite. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't say, "There, there." She slowly got to her feet, brushing the dirt from her knees. "Okay," she said, her voice low and steady. "Okay, so now you know." "Is that all you have to say?" I wailed. "No, it's not." She fixed me with a stare. "First, you will stop crying. Right now. Tears are for later. Right now, they are a luxury you cannot afford. He has been stealing your life, piece by piece. It's time you took it back." "Took it back? How? He's my husband. We have a son, a life." "You had a life," she corrected me. "He has chosen to build another one. You are now in a war, Ruth. And the first rule of war is to know your enemy and to gather your weapons." "Weapons? I don't want weapons, I want my husband back." "You can't have him back," she said, her voice softening just a fraction. "That man is gone, if he ever existed at all. The man you're married to now is a liar and a cheat, and liars and cheats only understand one thing: consequences." She told me to go home, to act normal, to not confront him yet. "He'll just lie, and then he'll hide everything better. You need evidence, real evidence. Bank statements, credit card bills, anything you can get your hands on. Be smart, Ruth. Be quiet, and be strong." Driving home, Clara's words echoed in my head. A war, weapons, consequences. It felt so cold, so calculated. This wasn't me. I was Ruth, who planned birthday parties and book club meetings. I wasn't a spy, a guerrilla fighter in my own marriage. When I walked in, David was in the living room, watching a game. He looked so normal, so comfortable. My husband, the father of my child, the man who texted another woman that he missed the sound of her voice. "Where'd you run off to?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. I just went for a drive. Needed to clear my head. He grunted in response. I stood there, in the doorway, watching him. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So, if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. And for the first time, instead of heartbreak, I felt a flicker of something else. Something cold and hard. It was the beginning of anger. The unraveling was complete. The tapestry of our life was in tatters at my feet, and I was no longer the weeping wife picking up the threads. I was the one holding the scissors. Confronting a liar is like trying to nail jelly to a wall. You think you have a solid grip. You think you're making a point, and then it just slithers away, leaving you with nothing but a sticky, messy feeling of confusion. For 2 weeks, I followed Auntie Clara's advice. I was a ghost in my own home, silent, observant, gathering what Clara called the ammunition. I found more credit card statements for the secret account charges for hotels, for expensive dinners at restaurants we never went to, for jewelry stores I'd never heard of. I noted the times he left, the times he came home, the new, more expensive cologne he'd started wearing. The weight of it all was crushing me, the pretending. Smiling at him across the breakfast table, asking him if he wanted more coffee, when all I could see was the text message. She's been asking a lot of questions lately. I felt like I was losing my mind. The constant pressure of the secret creating a high-pitched whine in my brain that never went away. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Leo was at a friend's house for a sleepover. David and I were supposed to have a date night, a tradition we'd let slide over the years. He'd promised me weeks ago. But at 6 o'clock his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and that familiar, private smile returned. "Ruth, I am so sorry," he said, his voice dripping with feigned regret. "That's Pendleton. There's a crisis with the data merge. The whole system is down. I have to go in." It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. The calm certainty in his voice, the way he didn't even look at me, it was the final straw. The whine in my head became a scream. "No," I said, my voice quiet. He was already grabbing his keys. "What?" "No, you're not going." He stopped and turned, a look of genuine astonishment on his face. I rarely contradicted him. "Ruth, this is my job. This is what pays for this house, for our life." "Our life?" I let out a bitter laugh. "What life, David? The one where you work late every night? The one where you take secret credit cards to pay for hotels?" The color drained from his face. For a glorious, terrifying second, I saw the mask slip. I saw raw, panicked fear. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of wounded indignation. "What in God's name are you talking about? Secret credit? Cards? Have you lost your mind?" "I saw the statement, David. The American Express. The P.O. Box. I saw the charges. The Moonglow Hotel. The Diamond Vault. Who is Chloe, David?" He took a step towards me, his eyes wide with what looked like sincere confusion. "Chloe? From work? Ruth, are you listening to yourself? This is paranoid. This is insane." He ran a hand through his hair, the picture of a beleaguered, misunderstood husband. I've been under a lot of pressure, and I know I haven't been as present as I should be, but this is a whole new level. He was doing it. He was gaslighting me, making me feel like I was the crazy one, the unstable wife who was inventing fantasies because her husband was busy. Don't. I whispered, my voice trembling. Don't you dare. I saw the texts. I saw you call her baby. I saw you tell her you had to be careful because I was asking questions. His face went through a rapid series of emotions, shock, calculation, then a deep, profound sadness. He sank onto the arm of the sofa, shaking his head. Oh, Ruth, oh my God. What? I demanded, my fists clenched. You saw texts on my phone? So you went through my phone? He looked at me with such disappointment, such hurt, that for a moment I actually felt guilty. That is a profound violation of my privacy, of my trust. I violated your trust. I choked out, incredulous. Yes, you did. Those texts. Ruth, you completely misunderstood them. He let out a heavy sigh, as if carrying the weight of the world. Chloe, she's a brilliant kid, but she's emotionally fragile. She's been having problems with her boyfriend. She texts me sometimes, late, because she doesn't have a father figure. I've been trying to mentor her, to be a sounding board. She calls me baby sometimes. It's just a silly, generational thing. And when I said she was asking questions, I meant you, yes, but not because I'm having an affair, because I was trying to plan a surprise for you. For our anniversary. I was asking her for advice on jewelry, and I didn't want you to find out. He looked so earnest, so believable. The story was ludicrous, a tangled web of nonsense, but he delivered it with such conviction that a small, desperate part of me wanted to believe it. Maybe I had gotten it all wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the pressure of an empty nest, looming with Leo getting older, had gotten to me. I stood there, swaying, the fight gone out of me. I was so tired. See? He said softly, standing up and coming towards me. He put his hands on my shoulders. You've worked yourself up into a state over nothing. I'm sorry I've been distant. I'm sorry you felt you had to resort to this. He gestured towards his phone. But we're a team, Ruth. We have to trust each other. He pulled me into a hug. I stood there, rigid, my arms at my sides. He smelled of his new cologne and his old, familiar skin. The combination made me nauseous. I have to go deal with this work crisis. He murmured into my hair. Let's forget this happened, okay? We'll talk tomorrow. We'll go out for a nice brunch. He released me, gave me a sad smile, and walked out the door. I listened to his car start and drive away. The house was silent, profoundly, utterly silent. I walked to the sink and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady. The confusion, the doubt, the guilt he had so skillfully injected into me, it was all gone, burned away by a clean, cold flame of clarity. He was a liar, and he was a very, very good one. He hadn't just denied it, he had rewritten reality, making himself the victim and me the unstable villain. I picked up my phone and called Auntie Grace. This time, I didn't cry. My voice was flat, eerily calm. "He's lying," I said. He gave me some story about mentoring a fragile young woman and planning a surprise anniversary gift. "Oh, honey," Grace breathed, her voice full of pity. "I'm not calling for pity, Auntie. I'm calling to tell you that it's over. The marriage is over. I know it now. I need to know what to do next." There was a long pause. Then Grace said, "You call my sister. You tell her exactly what he said. And then you do exactly what she tells you to do. It's time, Ruthie. It's time to stop being the wife and start being the general." I hung up and looked around my beautiful, silent, empty house. It was no longer a home, it was a crime scene. And I was finally ready to call the detectives. The meeting took place in Auntie Clara's sunroom, a place usually filled with the scent of jasmine and the cheerful chirping of her canary, Pip. Today, the air was thick with purpose. Clara sat in her high-backed wicker chair like a queen holding court. Grace was on the sofa, nervously twisting a tissue in her hands. And I sat opposite them, a legal pad on my lap, feeling like a student about to take the most important exam of her life. "Start from the beginning," Clara commanded. "Don't leave anything out." Not a single word. I told them everything, the entire confrontation, verbatim. David's performance, his ridiculous story about the fragile Chloe and the surprise anniversary jewelry. When I finished, Grace looked heartbroken. Clara looked furious. "The audacity," Clara hissed. "The sheer, unmitigated gall. To look you in the eye and spin a fairy tale like that." She leaned forward. "This tells us two things. One, he is deeply entrenched in this lie. He has no intention of coming clean. And two, he thinks you're a fool. He believes he can manipulate you that easily." "He almost did," I admitted softly. "For a minute, he almost had me believing I was crazy." "That's their greatest weapon," Grace said, her voice trembling with anger for me. "They make you doubt your own sanity. Don't you ever let him do that again, Ruth. You trust your gut. Your gut has never lied to you." "Grace is right," Clara said. "Your gut led you to the phone. Your gut told you he was lying. Now, we need to follow that gut all the way to the truth. The whole ugly truth." She pointed a finger at my legal pad. "We need to find out who this Chloe is. We need an address. We need to understand the scope of this." The scope. The words filled me with dread. How big was this? How long had it been going on? The credit card statements went back 18 months. Was that all? Over the next few days, with my aunties acting as my support and strategy team, I began to dig deeper. It was Grace, surprisingly, who had the breakthrough. She suggested we look at our old family cell phone plan online. David handled the bills, so I'd never bothered. I logged in, my password thankfully still the same. There it was, his number. My number, Leo's number, and a fourth number. A line added to our family plan almost 2 years ago. The billing name was listed as D. Hayes Corporate, but the number was registered to a Chloe Evans. We had her full name. With a name, Clara's friend, a retired private investigator named Frank, was able to find an address. It was an apartment in a new, trendy complex about 20 minutes away, in the opposite direction from David's office. The rent, as Clara discovered by posing as a prospective tenant, was astronomical. "He's not just having an affair, Ruth," Clara said, her voice grim. "He's maintaining a separate residence." The ground fell away from beneath me. A separate residence. This wasn't a series of hotel rooms. This was a life. The following Saturday, David told me he was playing golf with clients. I knew he was lying. I dressed in a baseball cap and sunglasses, a uniform of cliched spies and betrayed wives. I felt ridiculous and sick to my stomach. Grace came with me, a silent, solid presence in the passenger seat. "We're in this together, Ruthie," she'd said, gripping my hand. "You don't have to do this alone." We parked across the street from the Schode apartment complex, tucked behind a large delivery van. The morning dragged on. I felt like a stalker. I was about to suggest we leave, that this was a mistake, when a familiar silver Lexus, David's Lexus, pulled into the parking lot. My breath hitched. He got out. He was wearing casual clothes, not golf attire. He looked relaxed, happy. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. And out she stepped. Chloe. She was young, maybe 30. Slender, with long, honey blonde hair. She was dressed in expensive-looking yoga clothes. She laughed at something David said, and he put his arm around her, pulling her close as they walked towards one of the ground-floor apartments. The intimacy of the gesture was a physical blow, but that wasn't the worst of it. As they reached the door, it opened from the inside. A little girl, no more than 3 or 4 years old, with a head of curly blonde hair, came running out. She shouted, "Daddy!" and launched herself at David's legs. He swept her up into his arms, laughing, and kissed her cheek. The 3 of them disappeared inside the apartment, a perfect, happy little family. The world went silent. The sound of traffic, of Grace's sharp intake of breath beside me, of my own thudding heart, it all just vanished. I was trapped in a vacuum. I stared at that closed door. The image of my husband, that little girl, and her mother burned onto the back of my eyelids. Daddy. He had a child. He had another daughter. He had a second family. The betrayal was no longer just about me, about our marriage. It was about Leo. It was about this little girl. It was about the life he had been building in the shadows, a life that was a mockery of the one he had with me. I don't know how long we sat there. Grace finally reached over and put her hand on my arm. "Ruth," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Oh, my dear girl, I'm so sorry." I didn't cry. I felt beyond tears. I felt hollowed out, scooped clean, of all emotion, all pain, all love. There was nothing left but a cold, vast emptiness. "He has a child," I said, my voice a flat, dead thing. "I know, honey, I saw. Leo has a sister, a half-sister he doesn't know about." Grace just squeezed my arm. I started the car. My hands were steady, my vision was clear. The last vestiges of the old Ruth, the one who loved David, the one who hoped for a reconciliation, the one who believed in surprises and anniversary gifts, that Ruth was gone. She had died in that parking lot, watching another little girl call her husband Daddy. I drove home in silence, Grace watching me with worried eyes. When we got to my house, I walked inside, went straight to the fireplace, and took down the large, canvas-printed family portrait that hung above the mantel. It was from 2 years ago. David, me, and Leo, all smiling, a picture of perfect familial bliss. A lie. I carried it into the garage and placed it face down against the wall, next to a stack of old paint cans. I wouldn't destroy it. It was part of my story, part of Leo's history. But I would never look at it again. I went back inside, picked up the phone, and called the best divorce attorney in the city. When the receptionist answered, my voice was clear and firm. "My name is Ruth Hayes," I said. "I'd like to schedule a consultation. I believe my husband is engaged in extensive marital fraud, and I am preparing for war." War. It's a dramatic word, isn't it? It conjures images of trenches and explosions, of soldiers and strategy. But the war of divorce, especially one like mine, is a quiet, brutal, bureaucratic war. It's fought with paperwork and subpoenas, with financial disclosures and legal motions. The battlefield is a courtroom, and the casualties are measured in broken hearts and shattered futures. My general was a woman named Eleanor Vance. She was in her late 50s, with a sleek silver bob and eyes that missed nothing. Her office was all cool grays and modern art, a place where emotion went to die and strategy was born. When I sat across from her and laid out my story, the credit cards, the P.O. box, the second family, the little girl, she didn't flinch. She simply took notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen scratching efficiently. "This is what we call egregious marital misconduct," she said, her voice calm and professional. "Adultery is one thing. Maintaining a second household and a secret child is another entirely. It will play very poorly for him with the judge, especially regarding alimony and the division of assets." However, she paused and looked at me. "Our primary focus, and his, will be finances. We need to find out where all the money has gone." She had me sign a retainer agreement. The number made me dizzy. This was real. There was no turning back. Serving David with the divorce papers was the first official volley. Eleanor advised having a process server do it at his office. "It establishes the formal, non-negotiable nature of this from the very beginning," she said. I was at home, trying to concentrate on pruning my rose bushes, when my phone rang. It was David. His voice was a low, furious growl. "What the hell is this, Ruth? You had me served? At my office? Are you insane?" The calm that had settled over me since seeing the little girl held firm. "I think you know exactly what it is, David. This is about your paranoid delusions? I told you, there is nothing going on with Chloe. We are mentors. Friends." "Is she the friend you have a child with?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost hear the gears in his brain grinding to a halt. He had been caught. The jig was up. When he spoke again, all the anger was gone, replaced by a cold, weary contempt. "So, you've been spying on me." "I've been discovering the life you've been living," I corrected him. "The life you've been stealing from me and from Leo." He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Stealing? I've built everything we have. That house, your car, the clothes on your back. I paid for it all. You contributed nothing." The words were meant to eviscerate me, and they did for a second. The nothing echoed in the hollow space he had created inside me. But then I thought of the 25 years of meals cooked, of clothes washed, of a child raised, of a home built. I thought of the career I'd given up. "We'll let a judge decide the value of my contributions, David," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch." "You'll regret this, Ruth," he snarled. "I promise you, you will regret this." He hung up. I stood in my garden, the phone clutched in my dirty hand, looking at my beautiful, doomed roses. The war had begun. His retaliation was swift and cruel. The very next day, he moved out. But he didn't go to Chloe's apartment, I later learned. He rented a furnished corporate suite, a sterile, temporary space. A legal strategy, no doubt, to avoid looking like he was already enmeshed in a second family. Then, he cut me off financially. He canceled my credit cards. He drained our joint checking account, leaving me with just over $300. He even stopped the automatic mortgage payment. When I called the bank, frantic, they told me the account was frozen pending legal proceedings. I was in a multi-million-dollar home with a car in the garage, and I couldn't buy groceries. I had to call Auntie Grace and ask her to bring me milk and bread. The humiliation was a fresh, new kind of pain. The hardest part was telling Leo. He was 15, caught in the turbulent waters of adolescence, and now his world was being torn in two. I sat him down in the living room, the space where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays. "Your father and I were getting a divorce," I began, my voice shaking. He shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. "Okay, whatever. A lot of kids' parents are divorced." It's a little more complicated than that, honey." I took a deep breath. "Your father, he has been involved with another woman for a long time, and they have a child together, a little girl." Leo's face, usually a mask of teenage boredom, crumpled. The shock and hurt in his eyes was the most devastating thing I had ever seen. "What, a kid? I have a sister? A half-sister, yes." He stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Is that why he's never around? Is that why he missed my last 3 soccer games? Because he has another family?" I could only nod, tears streaming down my face. "I hate him," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I hate him." He turned and ran upstairs, slamming his bedroom door so hard the whole house shook. I sat on the sofa, alone, listening to the sound of my son's heart breaking. This was David's war, not just on me, but on his own son. He was trying to break me financially and emotionally. He wanted me to be so desperate, so isolated, that I would settle for whatever crumbs he offered me. That night, I lay in my empty bed, staring at the ceiling. The fear was a live wire in my chest. What if he won? What if he succeeded in taking everything? The house, my financial security, my son's respect for me. The cold emptiness inside me began to fill with something else, a steely, unshakable resolve. He had underestimated me. He thought I was the quiet little wife who would crumble under pressure. He thought my kindness was weakness, but he had forgotten the core of who I was. I was a storyteller. and I was about to rewrite the ending of this story. He wanted a war? Fine. But he wasn't fighting the woman he'd married anymore. He was fighting Ruth Hayes, the general. And I had just begun to fight. Eleanor Vance's office became my second home. It was my command center. Spread out on her massive mahogany table were not love letters or mementos, but bank statements, tax returns, and profit and loss sheets. They were the hieroglyphics of my married life, and we were the archaeologists, trying to decipher the true story they told. The problem, Eleanor said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on a statement from David's business, is that David is very, very good at what he does. And what he does, apparently, is hide money. David's consulting firm, Hayes Solutions, was ostensibly thriving. But according to the records he was forced to disclose, his personal draw had remained stagnant for years, while business expenses had skyrocketed. He's funneling money, I said, the realization dawning on me. It wasn't just what he was spending on Chloe, it was what he was hiding from me, from the IRS, from everyone. Precisely, Eleanor said. Look here. She pointed to a series of large regular payments to a company called Apex Holdings. What is Apex Holdings? I had no idea. It sounded like one of his client companies, but when Eleanor's forensic accountant dug into it, Apex Holdings was a shell company. A ghost. It was registered in Delaware, with a P.O. box for an address, and the sole signatory on the account was David M. Hayes. He's paying himself, I breathed, a mix of horror and grim satisfaction washing over me. He's invoicing his own company through Apex and pocketing the money. It's a classic tactic, the accountant, a quiet man named Ben, said. He's depressing the apparent income of Hayes Solutions to reduce his support obligations to you, while stashing the real profits in a separate, hidden account. The web was intricate and disgusting. There were consulting fees paid to non-existent subcontractors. There were inflated expenses for travel and client entertainment, many of them coinciding with charges on the secret credit card for dinners with Chloe and trips they had taken. He had even taken out a second mortgage on his business property and used the funds to purchase the apartment for Chloe, titling it in the name of another LLC he controlled. He hadn't just been cheating on me. He had been cheating the entire system. He had built a financial labyrinth designed to make him look like a man of modest means, while secretly amassing a small fortune that he shared with his mistress and their child. The sheer scale of the deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated, long-term financial plan. He had been preparing for this divorce long before I ever knew I wanted one. He had been ensuring that when the time came, I would be left with nothing but debt and legal bills. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. For 25 years, I had trusted this man with everything. I had signed tax returns without reading them. I had trusted that the money in our joint account was the full picture. I had been the dutiful, ignorant wife, and he had used my trust as a weapon against me. Can we prove it? I asked Eleanor, my voice small. It all seems so complicated. It is complicated, she agreed. That's the point. But Ben is the best. And complicated just means it takes longer to unravel. We will subpoena every bank account, every business record, every email associated with Apex Holdings and his other shell companies. We will follow the money trail until it leads us to the truth. The process was slow, expensive, and emotionally draining. Every new discovery was a fresh betrayal. I learned about a secret brokerage account he'd opened in Chloe's name. I saw transfers for thousands of dollars made right around my birthday and our anniversary. While he was giving me a modest piece of jewelry, he was buying her a diamond bracelet. While he was complaining about a slow quarter, he was transferring $50,000 to a hidden account in the Cayman Islands. I shared all of this with my aunties during our weekly strategy sessions. Grace would listen, her hand over her heart, gasping at each new revelation. Clara would just nod, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes blazing with a cold fire. "He's a common thief," Clara declared one evening. "A snake in a suit. But snakes can be cornered, they can be exposed." "But how?" I wailed, feeling the weight of it all. "He's so careful. It's all hidden behind layers and layers of corporate nonsense." "There's always a weak link, Ruth," Clara said, her voice steady. "Always. In his case, the weak link isn't in the numbers. It's in the people. He can't do this all by himself. He has a bookkeeper, an assistant. Someone knows something. Someone always knows." Her words stuck with me. Someone always knows. I thought about David's office. He had a small staff. His longtime assistant, Marjorie, had retired a year ago. He'd replaced her with a young, bubbly woman named Caitlin. I mentioned this to Eleanor. "It's a long shot," I said. "But what about his staff? Could we talk to them?" Eleanor steepled her fingers. "We can't approach them directly. That could be seen as witness tampering. But," a slow smile spread across her face, "we can subpoena them for depositions. We can compel them to sit in a room, under oath, and answer our questions." People get nervous under oath, especially when they realize they could be implicated in fraud. A tiny spark of hope flickered in the deep, dark well of my despair. The financial web David had woven was vast and complex, but Clara was right. Webs are made of strands, and strands can be broken. We just had to find the right one to pull. The legal machinery ground on, slow and inexorable. Subpoenas were issued. David's response was to become more belligerent. His lawyers filing motion after motion to block our requests, to delay the proceedings, to drain my resources. His strategy was clear: run out the clock until I ran out of money and will. The strain was taking its toll. I was living on loans from my aunties, a humiliation that burned every time I had to go to the grocery store. Leo was sullen and angry, dividing his time between raging at his father and giving me the silent treatment, as if I were somehow to blame for shattering his world. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a gilded cage. It was during this bleak period that the first crack in David's armor appeared, and it came from a completely unexpected direction. I was checking the mail, a daily exercise in dread, when I found a plain, white business envelope with no return address. It was addressed to me, handwritten in a neat, unfamiliar script. Inside, there was no letter. Just a single, glossy photograph. It was a picture of David and Chloe. They were on a beach somewhere tropical, laughing, their arms wrapped around each other. And standing in front of them, held in David's other arm, was the little girl. They were the picture of a happy, loving family, a family on vacation, a vacation my money had paid for. Scrawled on the back of the photo, in the same neat handwriting, were 2 words. Ask Caitlin. My heart hammered against my ribs. Caitlin, David's assistant. This was the weak link. Someone was trying to help me. I immediately called Eleanor. I think we need to move up Caitlin's deposition, I told her, my voice shaking with excitement. I think she's ready to talk. The deposition was scheduled for a week later. I wasn't allowed to be in the room, but Eleanor promised to debrief me immediately afterward. The day felt like it lasted a year. I paced my house, too anxious to eat, too distracted to read. My entire case, my future, might be resting on the conscience of a young woman I had never met. Finally, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. Ruth, she said, and I could hear the triumph in her voice. We got her. Caitlin, it turned out, was not the bubbly, oblivious girl I had imagined. She was sharp, detail-oriented, and had a strong moral compass. She had grown increasingly uncomfortable with David's instructions over the past year. She was the one who had been told to manage the P.O. box. She was the one who booked the flights and hotels for his business trips that coincidentally aligned with Chloe's social media posts from the same locations. She was the one who processed the invoices for Apex Holdings, knowing full well it was a shell company. At first, she thought it was just aggressive tax planning, Eleanor explained. But when she saw the child support payments he was making to Chloe from the Apex account payments he was deliberately hiding from our discovery, she realized it was fraud. And when she saw how he was trying to financially strangle you, she got angry. The anonymous photo had been her doing, a final desperate nudge. Under oath, with the threat of perjury and being an accessory to fraud hanging over her, Caitlin broke. She provided passwords. She handed over external hard drives with copies of every financial record she had ever processed. She gave us a roadmap to every hidden account, every fake invoice, every secret transfer. She was our whistleblower. The single strand that, when pulled, began to unravel David's entire meticulously constructed web. The evidence was now overwhelming and incontrovertible. We had him. We had proof of perjury, of tax evasion, of hidden assets, of intentional dissipation, of marital funds. This was no longer just a messy divorce. It was a white-collar crime scene. Eleanor was ecstatic. This changes everything, Ruth. He's not just looking at giving you half of everything. He's looking at forensic accounting fees, sanctions from the court, and a potential referral to the IRS for criminal investigation. He is in very, very deep trouble. I should have felt elated. I should have been dancing around my kitchen. But all I felt was a profound, bone-deep weariness. The truth was out. The facts were laid bare. But the emotional cost had been catastrophic. The man I had loved was not just a cheat. He was a criminal. The father of my son was a man who would lie, steal, and destroy to get what he wanted. I thought of that photograph, the happy family on the beach, that little girl who called him Daddy. What would happen to her when his house of cards came tumbling down? A part of me, the mother in me, ached for her. She was an innocent in all of this, just like Leo. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed and left for financial and emotional dead, felt that cold, hard resolve return. He had made his choices. He had built his second family on a foundation of lies and stolen money. The consequences were his to bear, not mine. Justice was no longer an abstract concept. It was a tidal wave, gathering force offshore, and it was about to crash down on David Hayes with the full weight of the law. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that I might not just survive this war, I might actually win it. A courtroom is a sterile place for such messy human drama. The air smells of lemon-scented polish and anxiety. The lights are too bright, bleaching the color from everyone's faces. You sit at a long, polished table, your life reduced to manila folders and legal pads, while a stranger in a black robe decides your fate. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 of the longest days of my life. David and I did not speak. We did not look at each other. He sat at his table with his high-priced attorney, a man with a perpetually bored expression. I sat with Eleanor, a pillar of quiet strength. The first day was about establishing the narrative of our marriage. My testimony was agony. Eleanor led me through our history, from our hopeful beginning to the slow, painful end. I spoke of giving up my career, of building a home, of trusting him completely. I had to say the words out loud. In this public, formal setting, I discovered my husband had a second family. The humiliation was a live wire. I could feel the eyes of the few spectators in the gallery on me. I saw the court reporter's fingers fly, recording my pain for the official record. David's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to paint me as a spendthrift wife, as paranoid, as a woman who didn't understand the pressures of running a business. He tried to suggest I had driven David away with my nagging, but the facts were on my side. The evidence was too strong. His attempts fell flat. The second day was the financial day. Then the forensic accountant took the stand. With cool, clinical precision, he laid out the entire scheme. He used charts and graphs projected onto a screen, showing the flow of money from Hayes Solutions to Apex Holdings, to the secret accounts, to Chloe's apartment, to the diamond bracelet. It was a masterpiece of destruction. You could feel the mood in the room shift. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Wilkins, leaned forward, her eyes narrowed, following every digit. When David took the stand, he was a shadow of the confident man I had married. His arrogance had been replaced by a nervous, sweating desperation. He tried to stick to his story, but under Eleanor's brilliant, relentless cross-examination, he fell apart. Mr. Hayes, is it your testimony that Apex Holdings was a legitimate client? Yes. And what services, precisely, did Apex Holdings provide for the $15,000 monthly retainer you paid them? Strategic consulting. Strategic consulting on what? I'd have to check the records. Let's check them together, shall we? Exhibit 42 shows the only work product ever submitted by Apex was a 2-page document copied verbatim from a Harvard Business Review article. Did you pay $15,000 a month for plagiarism, Mr. Hayes? He stammered. He contradicted himself. He claimed not to remember things he had sworn to in his depositions. When Eleanor presented him with the beach photograph, the one of his second family, his face went ashen. "This is a happy-looking family, Mr. Hayes. Would you agree?" "Objection!" his lawyer shouted. "Overruled. The witness will answer." David could only nod, his eyes fixed on the image of the life he was about to lose. "And this vacation to Maui," Eleanor continued, her voice like silk and steel, "was that paid for with funds from the Apex Holdings account? The account funded by the company you claim you were trying to build for your first family?" He had no answer. He just sat there, defeated. The mask was not just off, it was shattered on the floor. The judge saw it. Everyone in the room saw it. He was exposed as a liar and a fraud. The final day was for closing arguments. David's lawyer made a feeble plea for fairness, arguing that David was the primary breadwinner and that I was entitled to a reasonable share. But the fire was gone from his eyes. He knew it was over. Then Eleanor stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply walked the judge through the story one last time, not the story of a broken marriage, but the story of a calculated, long-term campaign of financial and emotional abuse. She spoke of trust betrayed, of a life's work devalued, of a mother and son left to fend for themselves. "Your Honor," she concluded, her voice resonating in the silent room, David Hayes did not just abandon his wife. He attempted to annihilate her financially. He perjured himself before this court. He hid assets. He committed tax fraud. He built a second life on a foundation of stolen money and broken promises. This is not about getting a larger share for my client. This is about ensuring that justice is done. It is about making sure that David Hayes is held fully accountable for every single lie, for every single stolen dollar, for every single moment of pain he has inflicted on Ruth and Leo Hayes. She sat down. The courtroom was utterly silent. Judge Wilkins adjusted her glasses, her face unreadable. She thanked both attorneys and said she would take the matter under advisement. A verdict would be mailed to us within a few weeks. The gavel fell. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon Sunday. Eleanor squeezed my arm. "You were magnificent, Ruth. Whatever the judge decides, you stood up for yourself. You told the truth. Never forget that." I saw David leaving through a different door. He didn't look at me. He just got into his car and drove away, a solitary figure in his sterile rental, the architect of his own destruction. I got into my own car, the one Auntie Grace had helped me buy with a loan. I sat there for a long time, my hands resting on the steering wheel, not moving. There was no sense of victory, no euphoria, just a vast, echoing emptiness. The battlefield was quiet. The war was over. And I was alone in the silence, surrounded by the rubble of the life I used to know. The weeks following the trial were the hardest. The adrenaline that had kept me going for months suddenly vanished, and I crashed. The silence in the house was no longer a respite. It was a physical presence, heavy and suffocating. The judge's decision came in the mail. It was a thick envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Eleanor had already called to give me the highlights, but seeing the words in black and white was still a shock. Judge Wilkins had eviscerated David. She awarded me the marital home, free and clear. She awarded me spousal support that was triple what we had initially asked for, citing David's egregious bad faith and intentional dissipation of assets. She awarded me a massive, equalizing payment representing half of every hidden account, every dollar funneled through Apex Holdings, plus my attorney's fees and a punitive sanction for his perjury. She even awarded me a portion of his future business profits for the next 10 years. It was a total, unequivocal victory. By the time the dust settled, I would be a very wealthy woman. David, on the other hand, would be left with a crippled business, massive tax liabilities, and a mountain of legal debt. The second mortgage on Chloe's apartment was deemed his sole responsibility. The life he had built in the shadows was financially obliterated. I should have been celebrating, but the money felt like blood money. It was a compensation for pain, but it couldn't heal the wound. The house was mine, but every room echoed with memories that now felt like lies. The financial security was mine, but it couldn't buy back my sense of trust, my identity, my 25 years. Leo was struggling terribly. He refused to see his father. He was angry, withdrawn, his grades plummeting. He spent most of his time in his room, the sound of his video games a low, constant thrum of escapism. One night, I heard him crying. I went to his door and pushed it open gently. He was sitting on his bed, his face in his hands. "Hey, baby," I said softly, sitting beside him. "I just don't get it, Mom," he sobbed, his voice muffled. "How could he do it? How could he have another kid? Doesn't he love me anymore?" I wrapped my arms around him, my heart breaking all over again. "Oh, Leo, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing. You are the most wonderful, lovable son any parent could ask for. This is about a sickness in your father, a sickness in his character. It's not a reflection on you. It was the truth, but I knew it was a truth he was too young to fully understand. His father's betrayal would be a scar he would carry for the rest of his life. I fell into a deep depression. The days blurred together. I would sleep until noon, drag myself out of bed, and wander the empty house in my robe. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped seeing my friends. I even pushed my aunties away. Grace would come over with soup, and I'd pretend I wasn't home. Clara would call, her voice sharp with concern, and I'd let it go to voicemail. I was the victor, but I felt like a ghost. I had won the war, but I had lost myself in the process. Who was Ruth without David? Without the identity of being his wife? I was a single mother, a divorcee, a woman wronged. But who was I really? One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the hall closet, staring at David's side. It was still full of his things, his coats, his golf shoes, a box of old sweaters. I hadn't been able to bring myself to touch them. On a sudden, impulsive wave of rage and grief, I started pulling it all out. I threw coats on the floor. I shoved shoes into a garbage bag. I was crying, "Great. heaving sobs that tore from my chest. And then I found it, tucked away in the back, on a high shelf. A small wooden box. I knew what it was instantly. Our memory box. From the first year of our marriage, we had written little notes to each other on scraps of paper, tickets from movies we'd seen, a dried flower from our first garden. We were going to open it on our 50th anniversary. I sank to the floor amidst the pile of his discarded clothes, holding the box in my lap. I hadn't thought about it in 20 years. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. The scent of old paper and cedar filled the air. On top was a faded note, in David's youthful, sloppy handwriting. To my beautiful Ruth. However many notes we fill this box with, it will never hold all the love I have for you. I will love you until the last star in the universe burns out. Yours, always, David. I read the words, and instead of bringing comfort, they unleashed a fresh tsunami of pain. The man who wrote that note was gone. He had ceased to exist, or maybe he had never existed at all. The promise was a lie. The love was a lie. Everything was a lie. I sat on that closet floor for a long time, holding the note, surrounded by the ghost of the man I'd loved. The silence was deafening. It was the sound of my life, broken. And I realized, with a terrifying clarity, that the money, the house, the legal victory, none of it mattered if I couldn't find a way to live inside this silence. If I couldn't find a way to breathe again. The war was over. But the real work, the work of rebuilding Ruth, was only just beginning. They say that after a forest fire, when the ground is scorched, black, and it seems like nothing could ever grow there again, the first seedlings find a way. They push through the ash, tiny and green and defiant. My soul felt like that scorched earth. But a seed was about to find a crack in the devastation. It was Auntie Clara, of course, who refused to let me wither away. She didn't come with soup or soft words. She came with a bushel of apples and a command. "Get dressed," she said, letting herself into my house one Tuesday morning. I was still in my robe at 11 a.m. "We're making pies, and you're going to help me." "I don't feel like making pies, Clara," I mumbled, pulling my robe tighter. "I didn't ask how you felt," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "I said we're making pies. Now, go put on some clothes. And for heaven's sake, brush your hair." There was something about her sheer stubborn force of will that got me moving. I got dressed. I brushed my hair. I came downstairs to find she had already laid out bowls, flour, butter, and was peeling apples with fierce efficiency. "Start on the crust," she ordered, pointing to the food processor. "Your hands are better with pastry than mine." We worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the whirring of the machine, the scrape of the peeler, and the steady chop-chop-chop of the knife. The rhythmic, physical work was strangely calming. My mind, which had been a chaotic storm of grief and anger, began to quiet. "You know," Clara said, not looking up from her apples, "my Arthur died 20 years ago. I loved that man with every beat of my heart. When he was gone, I thought I would die too. I sat in this very kitchen, in this very silence. For almost a year, I stopped, my hands covered in flour. I had never heard Clara speak so openly about her grief. What did you do?" I asked softly. "One day, My sister Grace, bless her, came over, just like I came here today. She didn't bring sympathy. She brought a stack of community college catalogs. She threw them on the table and said, "Pick one. You're too smart to sit here and rot." I stared at her. "You went back to school. I got a degree in horticulture. At 55. She gestured with her knife towards her magnificent garden, visible through the window. I learned how to make things grow again. It didn't bring Arthur back, nothing ever will. But it gave me a new story. A story that was just mine. She looked at me, her sharp eyes soft for a moment. "The Ruth who was married to David is gone, honey. She burned in that courtroom. You can sit here in the ashes, or you can plant a new seed. But you have to be the one to plant it." Her words settled deep inside me. A new story. A story that was just mine. After she left, taking 3 beautiful golden brown apple pies with her, I didn't go back to my robe. I went to my computer. With a trembling heart, I typed community college into the search bar. A week later, a brochure arrived in the mail. I had requested it on a whim, half hoping I would lose my nerve. It was for their continuing education program. I flipped through the pages, looking at pictures of adults, people my age sitting in classrooms, working in labs, laughing together. It looked foreign, terrifying. But then I saw it. A course called The Art of Memoir and Personal Narrative. My breath caught. The storyteller. The part of me that had been silenced, that had been told her contributions were nothing, that had only been allowed to curate someone else's life, that part of me stirred. It was a tiny, green shoot pushing through the ash. I enrolled. The first day of class, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. I was 53 years old. What was I doing here? Everyone would be young. They would laugh at me. I forced myself to go in. The classroom was filled with people of all ages. There were young students, but there were also people like me, with silver in their hair and lines on their faces, their eyes holding stories of their own. The instructor, a vibrant woman named Professor Larson, welcomed us. "Everyone in this room has a story," she began. "Your story is unique. It is valuable. And this semester, we are going to learn how to tell it." She had us do a simple exercise. "Write for 5 minutes," she said. "Start with the sentence, 'I remember.' Don't stop. Don't edit. Just write." I picked up my pen. "I remember." I wrote. And then the words began to flow. Not about David. Not about the betrayal. I wrote about the smell of my grandmother's kitchen. I wrote about teaching Leo to ride a bike. I wrote about the feeling of the sun on my face the first time I walked through the Italian countryside. I wrote about me, Ruth, separate from David, separate from the divorce. When the 5 minutes were up, I looked down at the page, covered in my looping handwriting. It was messy, it was raw, but it was mine. For the first time in over a year, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't pain, or anger, or numbness. It was interest. It was purpose. Driving home, the world seemed sharper, more in focus. The colors of the autumn leaves seemed more vibrant. I wasn't healed. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest. but the stone now had a tiny, green plant growing next to it. I had planted a seed, and to my utter astonishment, it was starting to grow. Karma is not always a dramatic lightning strike. Sometimes, it's a slow, relentless tide that erodes the shore until the ground beneath your feet simply gives way. For David, the tide had been coming in since the judge's gavel fell, and over the next year, I watched from a distance as his life crumbled into the sea. The first to go was his business. The massive equalization payment and the ongoing spousal support crippled his cash flow. The exposure of his financial chicanery destroyed his reputation. Hayes Solutions had been built on a facade of success and integrity, and once the facade cracked, the clients fled. The Pendleton account, the one he'd always used as his excuse, was the first to leave. Others followed, a slow, steady exodus of the very people who had funded his double life. I heard through the grapevine, the same one that had once carried whispers of his affair, that he'd had to downsize his office, then let his staff go. Caitlin, our whistleblower, had found a better job months ago. He was working out of a rented desk at a co-working space, a lone king in a kingdom of ruins. The financial pressure shattered his new life with Chloe. The apartment was the first thing to go. He couldn't afford the mortgage and the rent on his corporate suite. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that they had moved into a small, cramped rental in a less desirable part of town. The fairy tale life he had built for her, funded by stolen money, evaporated. The stress turned them against each other. The same source told me they fought constantly. About money. About the future. About me. Chloe, it seemed, had not signed up for a life of struggle and debt. She had signed up for a successful, wealthy man who could give her everything. That man was gone, revealed as a mirage. The final blow came about 18 months after the divorce was finalized. I received a formal letter from the State Department of Revenue. David was being audited. Based on the evidence uncovered in our divorce proceedings, the IRS and the state were launching a full-scale investigation into Hayes Solutions and Apex Holdings for tax evasion. Eleanor called me, her voice crisp with satisfaction. "It's what we expected, Ruth. He's looking at massive fines and a very real possibility of jail time." Jail time. The word should have made me feel victorious, but all I felt was a profound sadness. The man I had once loved, the father of my child, had so thoroughly destroyed his own life. The ultimate reckoning, however, was with Leo. My son had refused to see or speak to his father for over a year. David had tried, in his clumsy, guilt-ridden way, to reach out. He sent texts that went unanswered. He left voicemails that were deleted unheard. He bought Leo expensive gifts that were returned unopened. Then, on Leo's 16th birthday, David showed up at the house. I saw his car pull into the driveway from my upstairs window. My heart leapt into my throat. I went downstairs and stood in the doorway. He looked old. His shoulders were slumped. His suit jacket hung loosely on his frame. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a weary defeat. "Ruth," he said, his voice raspy. I just want to see my son. It's his birthday." "He doesn't want to see you, David." "Please, just for a minute. Before I could answer, Leo came down the stairs. He had grown taller, his voice deeper. He stopped on the bottom step, his face a mask of cold contempt. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice flat. "Leo, happy birthday, son." David took a step forward, his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. "I got you a present." He held out a small, wrapped box. Leo didn't even look at it. "I don't want it." "Leo, please. We need to talk. I'm your father." "Are you?" Leo's voice cracked with emotion. "A father doesn't do what you did. A father doesn't have a secret family. A father doesn't try to destroy his own son's mother. You're not my father. You're just a man I used to know." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. I saw David flinch as if he'd been physically struck. All the color drained from his face. The box slipped from his fingers and fell to the ground with a dull thud. "Leo," he whispered, but no other words came. Leo turned and walked back up the stairs without a backward glance. He went into his room and closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking shut was the sound of a life sentence being passed. David stood there on my porch, a broken man. He looked at me, and for a fleeting second I saw the ghost of the boy I'd fallen in love with, drowning in a sea of his own regrets. "I'm sorry, Ruth," he said, his voice barely audible, "for everything." Then he turned, got into his car, and drove away. I watched him go, and I felt no hatred, no schadenfreude. Just a quiet, solemn pity. He had chosen his mistress over me. He had chosen lies over truth. He had chosen greed over family. And in the end, his choices had cost him everything: his business, his freedom, his son, and himself. Justice had come knocking, and it had taken everything he held dear. A year can feel like a lifetime, or it can feel like the blink of an eye. For me, that second year after the divorce was a little of both. The days of deep grief and listless silence were behind me. In their place was a busy, purposeful, and often joyful new life. My memoir writing class had ignited something in me. I didn't just take one class. I took another, and then another. I joined a writing group with other women, and we met every Tuesday in a cozy coffee shop, sharing our stories, our struggles, our triumphs. For the first time in decades, I had a community that was entirely my own, built not on my role as David's wife or Leo's mother, but on my identity as Ruth, the writer. One of the women in my group ran a small, local online magazine. She read one of my essays, a piece about finding my voice again, after a long silence, and asked if she could publish it. I was terrified. Putting my words, my story, out into the world felt like standing naked in the town square. But I did it. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of comments and emails poured in. Women I knew, and women I didn't, wrote to tell me how my story had resonated with them. They shared their own stories of betrayal, of starting over, of finding themselves in midlife. I realized my pain had a purpose. My story could be a beacon for others lost in the dark. The editor asked me to write a monthly column. I called it The Second Act, and it became one of the most popular features on the site. I wrote about everything: the pain of betrayal, The challenges of single parenting a teenager, the joy of discovering a new passion, the hilarious indignities of online dating. I was raw, I was honest, and I was funny. My voice, the one David had told me was worth nothing, was now being read and cherished by thousands. The column led to other opportunities. A local bookstore asked me to host a writing workshop for women over 40. It sold out. I was asked to speak at a women's leadership conference. Standing at that podium, looking out at a sea of faces, I told my story not as a victim, but as a survivor, as a phoenix. My financial independence, once a source of anxiety, became a tool for empowerment. I didn't just live off the settlement. I invested it wisely with the help of a financial advisor Clara recommended. I used some of the money to turn my sunroom into a proper writing studio with a beautiful desk and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. I was no longer just living in the house David had provided. I was reshaping it, making it truly mine. Leo watched my transformation with a kind of awed pride. He saw his mother come back to life, stronger and more vibrant than before. He started talking about college, about his own future, with a new sense of excitement. The shadow of his father's betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined him. He was healing because he saw that I was healing. One sunny afternoon, I was working in my new studio when the doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a large, flat package. I opened it to find a beautiful, custom-made glass and metal sculpture. It was an abstract form, but it looked unmistakably like a phoenix, rising with wings spread. The card was simple. For the strongest, most incredible woman I know. Keep rising. All my love, Leo. I wept. They were the first tears I had shed in months that were not of pain, but of pure, unadulterated joy. I thought about David sometimes. The news of his sentencing had come through a few months prior. He had accepted a plea deal for the tax evasion, 18 months in a minimum security prison, plus restitution and fines. It was a fall from grace so complete it was almost Shakespearean. I felt no joy in his downfall, only a quiet sense of closure. The chapter was finally, irrevocably, closed. I had dinner with my aunties to celebrate the one-year anniversary of my column. We were at a nice restaurant, laughing, toasting with glasses of champagne. Grace was beaming, her face full of love and pride. Even Clara had a rare, soft smile on her face. "You did it, Ruthie," Grace said, squeezing my hand. "You really did it. You took all that pain and you turned it into something beautiful." Clara raised her glass. "I'll drink to that." To Ruth, who finally learned that the best revenge is not living well, it's living your life on your own terms. I clinked my glass with theirs, looking at these two incredible women who had been my anchors in the storm. I looked around the restaurant, at my life, at the future stretching out before me, full of possibility. The old Ruth, the one who lived in David's shadow, was gone. She had been refined by fire. And from her ashes I had risen stronger, wiser, and finally, completely, myself. I was the phoenix, and the sky was mine. If you've stayed with me this long, through all these chapters of my life, then you deserve to hear the moral of the story. Not from a lawyer, not from a judge, but from me, Ruth, the woman who lived it. When I was in the thick of it, when the ground was falling away beneath my feet and the world I knew was turning out to be a beautiful, painted lie, I thought the lesson would be about men. Don't trust them. Don't rely on them. Make your own money. And while there's some practical truth in that, it's not the heart of it. The heart of the lesson is about you. It's about who you are when the lights go out and you're left alone in the dark. For 25 years, I built my identity on being David's wife. I was the curator of our life, the keeper of our story. And when he took that away, I felt like I was nothing, because I had let my own story go untold for so long. I forgot I was even the author. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves isn't, "He would never cheat," or "This could never happen to me." The most dangerous lie is, "I am not enough on my own." That my value is tied to my relationship, my family, my role. That's the lie David fed on. He believed my kindness was weakness. He believed my trust was ignorance. He believed that because I had built a life with him, I couldn't possibly build one without him, and for a little while I believed it too. But here is the truth I learned in the fire, the lesson I want to leave you with, whether you're 23 or 83. Your story is your own, and no one, no matter who they are, has the right to tear out the pages. You are the author, you are the editor. You get to decide when a chapter ends and a new one begins. You get to decide which characters stay and which ones have to go. You get to write your own happy ending, even if it looks nothing like the one you first imagined. Betrayal, it doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your whole world. But a broken world can be rebuilt. You can take the shattered pieces, the pain, the anger, the humiliation, and you can use them to lay a new foundation, a stronger one made of truth and self-respect. It wasn't the money from the divorce that saved me. It was the words. It was finding my voice again and realizing it had power. Your salvation might be in painting, or in starting a business, or in going back to school, or in simply learning to be peacefully, powerfully alone. It's the thing that makes you feel like you again. The you that existed before the world tried to define you. So, if you're listening to this, and you're in the middle of your own storm, I want you to hear me. I see you, I feel your pain. It is real, and it is valid. But it is not the end of your story. Be still for a moment, in the quiet, past the noise of the fear and the hurt. Listen. There is a voice there, it's your voice. It might be a whisper right now, but it's there. It's telling you what you need to do. Maybe it's telling you to call a lawyer. Maybe it's telling you to confide in a friend. Maybe it's just telling you to get out of bed and brush your hair. Listen to it. Trust it. That voice is your compass. It will not lead you astray. The journey back to yourself is the hardest journey you will ever take. But it is also the most important. Because at the end of it, you will find a person you can rely on. A person who is strong and resilient and brave. A person who is enough, all on their own. You will find you. But I want you to know this: healing is not a race. It's not a finish line you cross and declare yourself fixed. It's a quiet unfolding. It's learning to breathe again without guilt. It's sitting at your own kitchen table and realizing the house still feels like home, even without the voice that used to fill it. It's learning to make coffee just the way you like it, not the way someone else preferred. The journey back to yourself is filled with little victories that no one will see but you: getting dressed even when you don't want to, taking a walk, saying no without apologizing, laughing and realizing it doesn't hurt as much as it used to. It's a process of remembering what brings you peace, what sparks joy, what makes you feel alive. It's about reclaiming the pieces of you that you handed away too easily and forgiving yourself for not knowing better back then. You will stumble. You will cry in grocery store aisles when you see his favorite brand of cereal. You'll reach for your phone to share something before remembering there's no one on the other end anymore. You'll feel lonely. But that loneliness is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It's there to remind you that solitude can be sacred too. Somewhere along the way, you'll begin to notice small shifts. You'll wake up one morning and realize your chest doesn't ache as much. The sun will hit your face through the window and you'll feel warmth instead of emptiness. You'll catch your reflection in the mirror and, for the first time in a long time, you'll see someone you recognize, not the broken version, not the betrayed one, but the real you, the one who survived. And when that moment comes, it won't be loud or dramatic. It will be quiet, gentle, like the soft closing of a door on a painful past. You'll breathe differently. You'll walk with a steadier step. You'll look at yourself and finally say, I made it. Because at the end of that long road, you will find a person you can rely on. A person who is strong and resilient and brave. A person who can sit in the silence without fear, who no longer needs validation to feel worthy. A person who knows that her value was never defined by someone else's love or approval. You will find the woman who learned to hold her own heart with care, who found beauty in the cracks and power in the rebuilding. You will find the woman who knows her worth not because someone told her, but because she discovered it in the ashes of everything that once tried to destroy her. You will find you, the truest, purest version of yourself, the one who was always there, waiting patiently beneath the noise of other people's expectations. And when you finally meet her again, you'll realize she was never really gone. She was just waiting for you to come home. And I promise you, from the other side of the pain, that woman, she is worth fighting for. She is worth every sleepless night, every tear that burned your skin, every ache that made you question if healing was even possible. Because one day, you will look back at the woman who crawled through the darkness, and you'll realize she was the reason you made it here. She kept going when you wanted to give up. She carried the weight when your spirit was too tired to stand. You'll see her in your reflection, and instead of pity, you'll feel gratitude. Gratitude for her courage, for her stubbornness, for her quiet defiance against the world that tried to silence her. I know what it's like to wake up every day and feel like you're still in the middle of the storm. To feel like you're surviving instead of living. But storms don't last forever. They clear, and when they do, they wash the world clean. The air smells different. The light looks softer, and so do you. There's a strange kind of beauty that only comes after loss. It's not loud, it's not glittering or grand. It's gentle, like the way the sun feels after weeks of rain. It's the beauty of knowing you can survive. The beauty of seeing life from the other side of heartbreak and realizing that pain was never your end. It was your beginning. One day, you'll tell your story too. Maybe not to the world, maybe not even out loud, but you'll tell it. And when you do, it will no longer hurt to remember. The memories will still be there, but they'll sit quietly in your heart, like old photographs, proof of what you endured, not reminders of what you lost. You'll share pieces of it with someone, maybe your daughter, your niece, a friend going through her own heartbreak, and you'll see the light flicker in her eyes when she realizes she's not alone. That's how healing continues. It ripples. It spreads. One brave voice becomes another, and another, until the silence that once isolated us becomes a bridge that connects us. That's what I hope my story has done for you. Because these words, this voice isn't just about what happened to me. It's about what happens to all of us when life shatters the illusion we've built. When love fails us. When trust is broken. When the version of ourselves we thought was permanent crumbles. It's about learning that even after all that, we can still rise. If you take one thing from me, let it be this: you are not broken beyond repair. You are not too late, too old, too lost, or too damaged to begin again. The world will try to tell you that your worth has an expiration date. Don't listen. Every sunrise is a reminder that life begins again, and so can you. I used to think that strength looked like never crying, never bending, never letting anyone see the cracks. But I was wrong. Strength is the opposite. It's crying and still showing up. It's bending and still growing. It's having cracks and letting the light through anyway. And that's what I am now, cracked, but shining. If you're still in your storm, don't rush it. Don't fight to escape it before it's done teaching you what you need to know. Pain, as cruel as it is also a sculptor. It carves away everything false, leaving behind the truth of who you are. And that truth, it's beautiful, it's yours. So, when the day comes, and it will come when you can stand on your own 2 feet again, lift your head high. Walk through the world not as a woman defined by what she lost, but by what she found. You found courage. You found peace. You found your voice. You found yourself. And when you finally see her, the woman who made it through, it will all make sense. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every tear was not wasted. They were chapters. And those chapters led you here to the most powerful realization of all. You were never the supporting character. You were the story. And maybe that's what I've been trying to tell you all along. That your story, no matter how painful, how messy, how imperfect, is still yours to tell. You can rewrite it. You can choose the tone, the ending, the message. You can make it a story of redemption, of strength, of quiet, unstoppable hope. So, write your next chapter boldly. Fill it with laughter that comes from your soul, with people who see your worth without you having to prove it. Fill it with mornings that feel light and nights that feel safe. Fill it with the peace you once thought you'd never find again. And when you do, think of me not as the woman who was broken, but as the woman who stood back up and kept walking. Because that's who you are too. With all my love and hope, Auntie Ruth. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.